class in memory of Jared Orchen, and today we're going to learn the Haftorah of the second Shabbat of Chanukah. Now we'll explain what does this mean. First we'll tell you the page. I have to find the page to tell you the page. Page 1492. Sounds good, 1492. Exactly, because of the expulsion.
Was that following?
Okay. Whenever, Chanukah is 8 days. When it's 8 days, if Chanukah starts on Shabbat, this year it's starting Saturday night. If Chanukah would start Friday night, there will be 2 Shabbases on Chanukah. The Haftorah is usually has a connection to the last portion of the Torah that you read on Chanukah. In addition to the regular parsha, you will read from the second Torah on Shabbat about Chanukah. Actually, in Chanukah, we read the Torah every day. What is it about? It's about the dedication of the temple that took place in the desert. Then we read every day. And if it's you take out 2 Torahs. The regular Torah, you read the regular parsha. Then, for the maftir, you read from the second Torah about Chanukah. The Haftorah is always has to do with the last parsha. That if the parsha is about Chanukah, the Haftorah will not be about the regular parsha of the week, Vayeshev. It will be about Chanukah. What do you do if you have 2 Shabbases in Chanukah? You need 2 Haftorahs for Chanukah. Then the Haftorah of the first Haftorah of Chanukah, most of the years we have only 1 Shabbos on Chanukah, right? Mm-hmm. Then we read the Haftorah of Shabbat with Parshat Baalotcha. It's a Haftorah that also we read it in the summer, and Baalotcha is in the book of Numbers. The same Haftorah we'll read for Chanukah. If it's 2 Shabbases, we're going to read this Haftorah. Now, the Haftorah that we read for the first Shabbos of Chanukah is about Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, who was doing the second temple, right? And he's speaking about, he sees a vision. First of all, he tells them, clean up your clothing, because the clothing of the high priest was at that time were impure, whatever it means. Obviously, it was a spiritual state of the high priest. His kids were not going the right way, therefore it's considered impure. Then he sees a vision with a menorah, and there is oil, and he has to light the candles. And God tells him this menorah represents the Jewish people. That's why, by Jewish people, in every synagogue, everywhere our symbol is the menorah. It's all about the menorah. Beautiful. That's the Haftorah of the regular Shabbat. If it happens to be 2 Shabbases, we read the Haftorah from the Book of Kings that speaks about the building of the temple of Solomon, the first temple that was built. Now, when you look at it, you ask yourself, why did you choose this Haftorah? Then the question right away becomes, why Zechariah speaks about the second temple? This Haftorah speaks about the first temple. Which temple was higher? What do you think?
It's higher. First temple.
Mm-hmm.
Holier.
First temple.
First temple.
How we know the first temple?
Because it had all the things in it.
The second temple was missing 5 things. But actually not 5 small things, the most important things. Mm-hmm. The second temple did not have an ark. The Ark of the Covenant was hidden during the end, a little bit before the destruction of the first temple, in the tunnels underneath the temple. It was hidden there. By the second temple, there was no ark. There was no the staff of Moses. And all the accessories, spiritual things also. For example, the Urim and Tumim, the breastplate, the breastplate. Then the high priest you could communicate with God with it, didn't work in the second temple. That the second temple was not as holy as the first temple. That the question is, wouldn't it be more appropriate to read the Haftorah for Chanukah, number 1 for the first temple, the big temple that Solomon made, the huge one, then the second, then if you need another Haftorah, the spare tire, then we'll take out something for the second temple. Why is it that we read first on the second temple? And only once in a blue moon When it happens to be that we have two Shabbos on Chanukah, then we return from the first temple. What do you think?
Make the temple feel better.
That's a thought.
Well, it's probably just, no, it's not.
What? Tell me what?
No.
Probably what? I don't mind.
It's not the right direction, I was thinking.
What do you mean not the right direction?
To go to the third temple. This is the second, the one we're studying today is the first temple.
The first temple. The other one was about, what you say you say something. It was about the second temple, and really was ultimately about the future of the Jewish people. And first of all, we rather speak about the future, as we spoke last week, that the prophets are all about the future. More than that, when Chanukah
The
happened,
Maccabees were much closer to the second
they
temple.
were doing the second temple.
They rededicated.
That's why it makes sense to read a prophecy about the second temple.
Right.
Not about the
176
first.
BCE.
Exactly. It's one answer. Now the first temple that we're going to read about, you know what, let's read a little bit. And first of all, then that's why we started the second temple. Well, there is much more to it. But let's read a little bit. We will read this time on page 1493, the introduction to the Haftorah in the note. Haftorah of Chanukah, second Shabbat, in the bottom.
This Haftorah summarizes the copperwork completed by Hiram, the master craftsman of Shlomo's temple, including small utensils, columns, and their fixtures in the vat. The concluding section describes the golden vessels which were made by Shlomo himself, the altar, table, supplementary menorahs, hence the connection to Hanukkah, musical instruments, small utensils, and the keys to the inner house.
Then just keep it in mind, Hiram and Solomon made the utensils in the temple. Okay, continue.
Why was a Haftorah, which describes the first temple, chosen for the second Shabbos of Hanukkah, and a Haftorah describing the second temple chosen for the first Shabbos? Sefer HaEshkol writes that the vision of Zechariah, second temple, read on the first Shabbos, has a stronger connection to Hanukkah, since the story of Hanukkah revolves around the second temple.
You see, you answered the question.
Therefore, it is read first. A further explanation is based on the principle that, quote, we increase in matters of holiness and do not decrease, unquote, from which it follows that the second Shabbos of Hanukkah must be on a higher level than the first. Therefore, on this second Shabbos, we read a Haftorah about the first temple, which enjoyed a superior spiritual standing, being that the second temple lacked 5 key elements: the ark, its lid, the cherubs, fire, divine presence, and divine inspiration.
Then we're going from the second. In Judaism, we always increase. We're going further. We start low and we go higher. Where we're going to the first temple was on a higher level than the second temple. That we have a second Shabbos in Hanukkah, we go even more. The first temple, who built the first temple? Solomon. But why it's called the temple of David and Solomon?
David and Solomon?
David and Solomon. It's not just Solomon.
David had the resources he left to Solomon to build.
David conquered Jerusalem.
David conquered Jerusalem. David bought the land.
From the
David left the sources
Jebusites.
for the Jebusites, and David left the resources. But you know, I have something interesting to tell you. Solomon did not use the money that David gave him to build the temple. He left it at treasures. It was treasures, and the treasures were there forever and ever until when? Until the Babylonian took it. Why Solomon did not use the
Well, it's
money that David left?
because David went to war.
So
He taxed the people. So what
Solomon did it.
about- Solomon did it.
Solomon taxed the people. Ooh, it was the biggest liberal. He taxed the Jews. There was no tomorrow. He taxed the people. He forced the people to work. He forced them. And that's by the way. It's called in Hebrew a bakshish. You know, in Arabic it's like you get an extra. Then we see a very strange thing about Solomon's temple. What happened after when Solomon passed away? What happened in the next generation?
Kingdom split.
The kingdom split.
His son pledged to tax the people even more.
Oh, was a delegation. Here is a perfect, it's very relevant to our days in life. A delegation came to Solomon's son, Rehavam was his name, and they told them, your father taxes us to death. We can't take it anymore. Reduce the taxes. You know, Solomon is Solomon, but he had to build a temple, he had to build a house for the Pharaoh's daughter that he married, the many other women. It was complicated. But we can't take it. That he says, give me 3 days, I will go, I'll give you an answer. He went to ask his father's advisors, the older generation. They told him, they are right. Don't tax them. They took it from your father, they'll not take it from you. Eved tiyeh la'am hazeh. Be a servant to the people. Do you know the expression a public servant comes from the Bible? Or they told Solomon's son, Rehavam, be a servant to the people. Not a king. Carry them on your shoulders. Feel them. Fine. That's what the older guy said. The transition team said something different. He told them, the young friends of Rehavam about his age and the experience as much as he had, told them, give it to them. What are you? You teach them a lesson. Tell them your father punished you. Basically, after 3 days, he called them back. They came back. He got out and he says, my father punished you with snakes. I will do it with scorpions. I'll show you who is the boss here. You know what? He said, have a nice day. 10 tribes. 10 tribes! Split it.
Went to the north.
Exactly.
But what did the Jared Kushner of his time say? That's what we want to know.
He's smarter than this. They say now to cut taxes, not to make more taxes. We'll see. In any case, you know what he did? The king of the 10 tribes was Jeroboam, was his name. Yerovam ben Nevat. He set up 2 idols, 2 golden calves. Can you believe it? In 2 centers of Israel. One place was Bethel. Bethel is the place where Jacob had a dream, and he saw that was the only place in the Jewish people's mind. It was a good place. You know, you need to connect it to the soul of the Jews. You have to connect the people emotionally. He says, we can have our own place. What do you need Jerusalem? He closed the doors to Jerusalem, the ways to Jerusalem. He didn't allow people to go to Jerusalem. It was the kingdom of Judah. You know, if you go to Jerusalem, you support the economy of Jerusalem. You might marry some girl from Jerusalem, might stay in Jerusalem. Bad news. We're not going to Jerusalem, close the door. Didn't allow anybody to go there. The question is, you cannot do such a thing if the people don't support you. What do you mean you close the ways to Jerusalem, the ways to Jerusalem? Can you imagine you're living in Israel, comes a guy and says you cannot go to the holy temple? It would be a revolt. Why is the 10 tribes didn't mind, the majority of them at least, didn't mind, close the Shoin will go, will not go, Shoin is nicht. Why they didn't care? The answer to it is very simple. When Moses built the temple in the desert, the portable temple, sanctuary, the Mishkan, what he says in the Torah, everybody should bring what his heart's desire, what his heart want to donate. People came, this person brought gold, the other person brought silver, the person brought some cookies, the other person brought, everybody brought what he can. Together they built the temple. It was everybody's temple. Everybody felt a part of the temple. Therefore, and the temple stood in the middle of the camp, and all the Jews were living around the temple. It was the heart of the whole camp, the whole nation. Came Solomon. He doesn't need donations. He didn't say anybody wants to give donations. Taxes. When you tax the people, nobody feels an emotional connection to the temple. You feel that you rip them off. That's what you feel. That you take the money even if I don't want to give. A temple that you're forced to build. Then he takes people, he mobilized people to build. There was no emotional connection to the temple.
Why would he do that? He had the money. Why would he tax the people? He was a wise man.
Wait a second.
He was a wise
Wait a
To rewrite
second.
it.
That's why when came Jeroboam and closed the doors, nobody cared. They didn't have an emotional attachment to the temple. Then think about it. The temple was the temple of the old Jewish people only for 4 years. Even less. It took him 7 years to build the temple. After first he built his homes, his own home for 13 years, and then he built the temple. Not even for, well, he was a king for 4 years. It was not even 4 years. 35 years, 30 years. It was the temple of the old Jewish people. Later, 10 tribes were off the temple. 2/3 of the Jewish people didn't use the temple. And here comes the question that Mr. Quaid is asking, that he was asking before. Why King David, Solomon did not use the money that David collected for him?
Is it up an endowment?
It's an endowment. You see what happens to endowment? Eventually the Babylonians take it.
foundation.
Why didn't want to take it, to use the money? The Medrash brings 2 explanations. One explanation is that King Solomon, he said the money, where was the money taken from? From wars, from other nations. It was a spoil. That he said, Solomon knew that one day the temple will be destroyed. That's why he built also the tunnels underneath the temple where they were hiding later the ark. He knew the temple is going to be destroyed. That he said, when the temple will be destroyed, the Gentiles, the nations of the world will say, oh, our God took revenge because he built it with our money, therefore the temple is destroyed. That's why he said, no favors. I don't want non-Jewish money there. On Jewish money. Then comes a very sad explanation. Very, very sad. During the time of King David, was a famine. You know that? Why was it was a famine? Why was a famine during King David's time?
Because he had taken a census.
Oh, because he decided to count the Jewish people. King David, it's written in the Bible, you're not allowed to count the Jews. He decided to count it. Joab told him, please, King, let Hashem bless your people even 10 times more. No, King David got into his head to count the Jewish people. He counted the Jewish people, and as a punishment, God made a famine of 3 years. 3 years! During the famine, King David was sitting on big treasures that he prepared for the temple. Right? What should he do with the money? Shouldn't he buy food for the Jews then? Temple. People are dying in the street. But he didn't want to touch, that's for the temple. That was his life mission. God said, money that you could save Jews with cannot be for the temple. And could be, some commentaries say, could be. You know, why God told David not to build a temple? Because
He had blood on his hands.
you know which blood? Not the blood of the walls. That was justified walls.
Uriah.
Oh no! The Jewish people that he could save with the money of the temple. Some commentaries say. That money that was not used, could use for people, and was not used for people, Solomon didn't want to build it at the temple. With this kind of money, he didn't want to build a temple. That you see that the first temple started a little with the wrong foot to begin with. But the Rebbe, as always, looks on the positive side. I would never hear such a commentary from the Rebbe. I can tell you that. He can put $1 million on it. Never. The Rebbe only spoke positive about the Jewish people. No, when I write my pictures that go around, people tell me, maybe you can start a little more positive things too. Why are you criticizing Jacob or this? No, I'm not the Rebbe. The Rebbe would never, every time, every situation, he would turn this around to find the positive side of the story. You can find positive in this to learn that when you save money, you have to remember what are the priorities in life. What's more important? You're not what, guys?
No.
Okay, good. Fine. In any case, the Rebbe says that the first temple, the two Haftorahs go because the second temple was lower. The first temple was higher. In this case, sometimes the Rebbe turns it around and says the second temple is better because the Jewish people build it more, but we're not going to. But the first temple is higher. But the problem with this Haftorah, the first Haftorah of the first Shabbos of Chanukah speaks about the Menorah, the lighting of the candles. You read this Haftorah, it's not even about the Menorah. We can read this Haftorah. If I wouldn't give you a whole speech, we would be done in 4.5 minutes. The Haftorah is about the building of the temple. The vessels, the this, the that. Not about one line. And Solomon made 10 menorahs. We'll get into it. Why he made 10 menorahs, I don't know. And the interesting part, this is chapter 7, from verse 40 to verse 50. In verse 50, it speaks about the inauguration of the temple, the first temple. When we finish this, the text continues about the inauguration of the temple, and now Solomon prayed to God, you should bring the divine presence. Isn't Chanukah about inauguration? Chanukah is inauguration. Wouldn't it be appropriate to read, you already take from the first temple, take something about the inauguration of the temple. Especially when you can read the second Haftorah. It's the 8th day of Chanukah. You read every day. You read from the Torah for Chanukah every day. You read on the first day, the offer, the sacrifice, the second day. Comes to the 8th day, you read from the 8th day all the way until the inauguration of the temple in the desert. That you read in the Maftir of the inauguration of the temple wouldn't be the right thing that the Haftorah should be about the inauguration of the temple. Not a word about inauguration. All about it. He made beams, and he made this, and he made this, and he made this. Not a word about the inauguration. Here comes something amazing. My friend, amazing. When the Chanukah story, what they didn't have. They didn't have oil, right? That's what you learned in school. My friend, that's what I learned in school. You know what the problem is? We finish to learn when we are 10 years old. That's a problem. 10, the end of the education. Jewish education is by 10. You know what I learned today? They didn't have oil. They didn't have a menorah. They never had a menorah.
Interesting.
You think the Greeks in the war, the Greeks left the whole thing intact? Oh, here is a beautiful, take it back. The Greeks took everything that was inside. There was no menorah. They came in the middle of the war. They finally conquered Jerusalem. The war continued, I think, for another 20 years, right? They wanted to do something. There was nothing there. No menorahs. What they did? You are the warriors. You come in. You want to light the candles. What do you do? Oil they didn't have. They didn't have a menorah. They didn't have. What they did was, what they used to fight with?
Spirit.
Sword.
Spears. What's a spear? It's like a
Stick with a point on it.
stick with a point on it. They kill people. Today you use it, for what? For
Barbecue.
Barbecue, exactly. It's called spear too? Really? Oh, good.
Well,
skewer.
Skewer. That's a better name.
Spear.
A spear.
I don't know.
And if you see, I saw depictions how they kill. That was used for. That was the weapon. They took 7 spears. They stick him in the ground, and that was the menorah. And then they looked for oil, and then they put the oil on top of it. And God made a miracle that the oil burned for 8 days. You never know this, huh? And the menorah, forget about the oil. Nothing. showing. Now, what should I tell you? Then what's more important, to have a menorah? Think about it. The miracle of the oil was a miracle that God made, not we did. What we did? We made a menorah. We made the vessel for God's miracle to take place. I understand? If there is no menorah, there is no oil. If there is no oil, you cannot make. For the miracle, you need to create an environment that the miracle can take place. So the Rebbe speaks about the two Haftorahs. He says the first Haftorah speaks about the oil. This Haftorah speaks about vessels. The Rebbe said the vessel is more important than the oil. Without a vessel, you cannot do anything. For example, we cannot make Moshiach come, but we can make the world a better place for Moshiach to come, to make it ready for Moshiach to come. You know, throughout Jewish history, there were people who tried to push the coming of Moshiach with Kabbalah, with words of God, with this, and they ended up not in a good way. The Rebbe spoke about Moshiach constantly. People didn't tell him, don't you know you're not allowed to push the cats, push the coming of Moshiach? The Rebbe said, I'm not pushing Moshiach. I'm making a world that will be ready for Moshiach. If Moshiach wants to come, he cannot come if there is nothing around. The miracle of the oil cannot take place if there is no vessels, if there is no menorah. The Rebbe said the whole story of the vessel here is to make a point. Then our job, the bigger job, is to make the vessel than to light the candle. For example, and then we brings it down to a very practical thing that I believe in it very much. I was there when the Rebbe spoke this talk, but at that time I didn't really appreciate what the depth, the look of it, the whole thing. I remember he spoke. That's why I chose this Haftorah, because I remember from there is a second Haftorah. but I didn't remember anything. The Rebbe said like this. I'll give you an example. To find a Jew on the street and to introduce him to Chabad is very painful. Takes 10 years. 10 years. I met many of you 10 years before you came here. I met you and your wife. Almost everyone here. I met you. I met you years ago. I met him 25 years ago. It took 10 years until he showed up. Right? It takes 10 years until somebody wants to talk to you. Then, when I bring them around, then everybody can come and say, oh, maybe you come to another class. Maybe you give another donation to this. You understand? The harder job is to make the vessel. When you make the vessel, anybody can light the candle. And the Rebbe says it. The Rebbe says because it's the harder job, that's why it's a more important job. Is to take the Jew and make from him a menorah. Then anybody can come and light the candle. That's easy. To pour the oil and light the candle. That's the easy part. You take 10 good Jews who want to learn Torah, let's make another class of Shekoyah. But it makes the Jew, to make him into a vessel for the candle, that's our job. And that's why we're going from the easier to the harder. The first Haftorah speaks about the oil. The second Haftorah speaks about the vessel, to make the vessel, to create a vessel that anything could take place in. And that's what it's all about. Now, I always used to tell it to my colleagues and my friends, yeah, you're a big chochem, come around here and then we'll talk. But, for example, there is Jews in other countries who are much more traditional, like Canada, like South Africa, like Mexico. It's easy to get the Jews come to shul and have. But when you come to places, they talk to you, what? Chabad who? When I came to Solon, I visited a few people. One of the guys told me, it was people that my in-laws knew the name. And I told me, Rabbi, you're in the wrong neighborhood. You just landed in the wrong place. You know, sometimes you move to a city, you don't go, you get Cleveland, no, it's the place. 10 years later, he started to come to shul. I told you it's 10 years. One day he comes, 15 years later, he came to apologize. He said, I'm sorry, Fong. I told him, you're lucky that I didn't understand English. I knew he's not in favor of my being here, but I really didn't understand exactly what he was saying. Then this is the second Haftorah. The second Haftorah is about making vessels. And you see, the moment we have already assured and it's established, strangers are afraid to talk to me. Because I have an agenda already. And I was pure and fresh and this and in anything. Oh, why not talk to this young, cute man? Now I'm not young and not cute. And I have a show. Then what I'm telling you this? Every one of you here has to do it. There are people who will not talk to me, but they'll talk to you. For example, Chanukah is coming up. Many times people say, oh, Chanukah again, I did it for so many years, it's boring, it's only me and my wife, we sit and looking at each other and light the candles, and forget about it. How you make it excited again? How you get excited about Chanukah? You invite somebody who doesn't do it, and you do it for them, so to speak. And he's the cause of celebration. Then it's going to be exciting. That was the introduction. Now we learn about the Haftorah. The Haftorah starts with the name Hiram. Who is Hiram?
From Lebanon, from the city of Tyre.
Then we just found somebody, a Lebanese to come and to do the temple.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
this?
He was the guy up in Lebanon. He was the temple builder.
Yeah, but what? The whole holy temple was built by a Lebanese guy?
I think he was half Jewish, according to some sources.
What do you mean half Jewish? Can you be a half Jewish?
Well, Jewish mother, right?
His mother was from the tribe of Naphtali, from the tribe of Dan.
That's true.
And according to some opinion, his father was in the tribe of Naphtali. He was fully Jewish, but for sure his mother was Jewish. That was Hiram. And he came, you're right, he came from Lebanon, from Tzor. The king there sent him to help to build the temple. Hiram and Solomon. Which tribe is Hiram? From the tribe of Dan. Solomon is from the tribe of Judah. No. Who built the temple? Who built the sanctuary? The portable, the Mishkan. Who were the two main people in the sanctuary who built the Mishkan?
Moses and
Not Moses. Huh?
Levi.
Not Moses. About two. Bezalel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bezalel and who else? The second name is really a little complicated.
Yeah, I think so.
And Ahaliav. Bezalel was from the tribe of Judah, and Ahaliav was in the tribe of Dan. Then 400 years later, how many years was this after the sanctuary?
480.
Thank you. See, he comes to good years. 480 years later, when it came to the building of the first temple, it was again Solomon from the tribe of Judah and Hiram from the tribe of Dan. Why God in the first time in the sanctuary chose one from Judah and one from Dan? Why God did that? And ultimately, Bezalel did the main job. Ahaliav was more. Why we needed somebody from the tribe of Dan? What is behind it? What do you think?
Dan eventually produced Samson, and one of the leading tribes, obviously in the north.
Was there anything special about them? Actually not. They were considered the lowest of the tribes.
Because they were born from maids.
There were other guys who were born for the maids, but
Right.
for some reason they end up to be the lowest. Then the Talmud says God wanted to make sure that every Jew feels equally connected to the temple. That when it comes to God's temple, there is no rich and poor, smart and less smart, and I am the more important, I sit on the right side and you sit on the left side. Everybody is equally important. That's why he chose Bezalel and he took Ahaliav. Together you build the temple. It's very important to make it, in many synagogues there is and the bima, the president sits and faces the crowd, and so other important people face. I don't believe in it. Everybody faces God and finished. All the souls come from this. More important is
I always wondered about when you watch the Rebbe sometimes, and behind him, just all these white long beard guys. These are obviously.
they were important rabbis, but that was not a prayer, that was a Verbringen. By prayer, the Rebbe stood faced the east, and everybody faced the east. Nobody faced the crowd. Then that's why it was somebody from the tribe of Judah, and here it's the same thing. Solomon and Hiram. If Solomon did it because of it or not, God made sure that this will take place.
So that's the same concept, Rabbi, as a couple of weeks ago we were learning about the harlots and something like that, and why did they have the harlots involved with whatever it was? And it was because that everybody would have a place. Everybody should feel equal.
Right, we have it in this Parshat too. We had it a few weeks ago too. Yes. The idea is, there is there is even a story that God saved the Jewish people through leopards. Remember the Haftorah about the leopards who came to save? Say, leopards? Hey, you don't decide how God wants to save you. God chooses to bring miracles to leopards too. God decided how to do it because God wants to show that in His place, when it comes to God, there is no difference. The most simplest Jew, the most poor Jew, and that's really, today we finished to celebrate the 19th of Kislev. 19th of Kislev it's called the Rosh Hashanah for the Chabad movement, for Chassidus. And why? Because the first Chabad Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Leadi was called the Baal HaTanya, who wrote the Tanya. He came out from jail. He was released from jail 200 and, how many years ago? 18? No.
It was 1798? No.
Yeah, something like this. Yeah, 1798, yeah, something like this. 218, yeah, something like this. Then, why was he in jail? Because Jews informed them to the government, to the Tsar. Why? Religious Jews. Why they informed them? Because he preached this concept that everybody is equally important in the eyes of God. They couldn't stand it. What was the fight in Joseph and the brothers? The brothers treated the children of the maidservant back to the maidservant like second-class citizen. Joseph couldn't handle it. He went to tell it to the father. That's why they hated them. They sold them. It's all the same story. It was with Joseph and the brothers. It was done to be the two representatives to build the temple. It was in the first temple. It's today. It's 218 years. It's all the same story. Then we don't read a story that once upon a time. We read the story of today. Okay, now we can start to read a little bit, just for the sake of it. Let's read Vayas Hiram. The commentary of Hiram. Who is about Hiram? 740. We continue the commentary.
Hiram then made etc. At first glance, the Haftorah's connection with Chanukah appears to be superficial. Only a passing reference is made near the end of the reading to the Menorahs, which Shlomo made, and most of the Haftorah discusses copperwork crafted by Hiram, a topic which appears to have no special connection to Hanukkah. Why do we not read from the following section in the Book of Kings, which speaks of the installation of the vessels and the dedication of the temple, a theme which is directly related to Hanukkah, when the temple was rededicated in the time of the Hashmonaim? Being that the increase in matters of holiness do not decrease, Shabbos 21b, the second and final Haftorah of Hanukkah, which describes the crafting of the vessels, seems to be teaching us that making the vessels is the greatest achievement of all, even more so than installing or using them. This rather bizarre conclusion points to profound mystical truth. That preparing the world for divine revelation, making vessels, is an even greater accomplishment than bringing the revelation itself, lighting the menorah. Holiness and godliness will only rest in a place which is fitting, so there is nothing especially radical about bringing holiness to a place which is already prepared for it. A truly remarkable feat is to take something which is unreceptive and repellent to the notion of holiness and to transform it into a fitting receptacle.
Then where is easier to be a Jew? In shul or in workplace? You understand? Yeah, it's a big tzaddik. Guys are tzaddik in shul. Sure, you're a big tzaddik. Everything, the whole environment calls for it. Going to your workplace and still remembering there is a God, that's an accomplishment. And that's exactly what he's saying here. Now we'll go to the text. Back to page 1492. We're finally going to start to read the text. Go ahead.
This is
Not in
what?
the bottom of the page.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Hiram then made the pots, shovels, basins. Hiram completed all the work that he had done on behalf of King Solomon for the house of God.
On behalf of King Solomon, he finished the vessels and all the type of vessels that were there. Go ahead.
The two columns, the two bowls of the spheres, which were on top of the columns, and the two nets to cover the two bowls of the spheres, which were on top of the columns.
Can you explain what it is? You had two columns, and it was spheres on top of it. What is spheres altogether? What is spheres? You know English?
Sphere.
Sphere is a ball.
The ball.
Round
Uh-huh.
ball.
Yeah. Ball shape.
Whatever it was, God knows. The 400.
The 400 pomegranates for the two nets, 2 rows of 100 pomegranates for each net, to cover the 2 bowls of the spheres which were on top of the columns.
The pomegranates. Where was pomegranates in the temple?
The bells
The bells.
that the high priest wore.
Deuteronomy 13.
Why? What does the pomegranates represent?
1,613 seeds.
It's a wake-up call. It's like the bell.
That's right. For the
Commandment. The
that's-
600
yeah.
commandments.
Yeah.
The pomegranate. The Talmud says something very interesting. That every Jew is full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate. Even if he doesn't realize he's making mitzvahs. You know, it's like unbelievable which type of Jews will do mitzvahs. You know, the mafia in Las Vegas, Lansky, Mayor Lansky, he supported Israel in 1948. They bought weapons, they smuggled weapons, they gave money, they did everything to save Jews. Then the Jew is the worst person in the world, you think, is full of mitzvahs. He can't. The nature, his DNA is mitzvahs. He can't help himself. There's a story about a man who needed in Europe, he needed to, Erev Yom Kippur, he heard that there is a family in jail. Why they're in jail? Because they didn't pay rent for months and months and months, and the poets, the sheriff, throw him into jail. The sheriff also knows before Yom Kippur. He did it purposely, before the holidays. Goodbye. Now we need money. He fell into a bar. He meets in the bar a few guys, Jewish guys, are drinking Erev Yom Kippur. They're not exactly running to the mikveh Erev Yom Kippur, you know. He comes in, he says, guys, it's Erev Yom Kippur, I have to do a mitzvah. There's a family in jail, we need money. Tell them, fine, no problem. For every cup that you drink, 100 ruble. One, 100 ruble, another one. This guy knew that the easiest money, where is he going to find the money now? He was drinking and drinking his life away. He got the full amount. He runs, he pays off the money, he gets the family from jail, out of jail, he's running home, he's supposed to eat the meal before Yom Kippur, but he's late, he's taking his talis, he's running to Shul, his Kol Nidre, he's coming down, he's completely drunk. He started Kol Nidre, he fell asleep, he slept until the end of Yom Kippur. He wakes up in the end of Yom Kippur, like by Nila, he wakes up. The whole crowd is screaming, Shema Israel! Or what? He started to cry, he fell asleep again. He had a dream that his father comes and tells him that this Yom Kippur was your best Yom Kippur ever. The mitzvah that you did was worth it more than everything. What I mean to say is the rimon, the pomegranate, represents the Jew that doesn't look for mitzvahs, but somehow ends up with many mitzvahs. That's why the theme in the temple was a lot about pomegranates, to represent this type of a Jew. Go ahead, we are number 43, I think.
The 10 bases and the 10 basins set upon the bases. The one vat with the 12 copper oxen under the vat.
Both basins, there were places to wash the hand, 10 basins. Then it was a big, Solomon created like a big swimming pool inside the temple and the courtyard of the temple, a huge thing. And in this was water. And the Kohanim used to wash the hand before they entered the temple. Some people used to say that they used to immerse themselves in that. But for sure they used to wash the hand. It was an amazing thing. It was almost like, we go to the Cleveland Clinic, they have this water thing around. By the entrance to the Cleveland Clinic, they have a waterfall, fountain, the big one full of water. It was something huge. That's what he's describing here. We are 44. The one wet, right? One what?
Yeah, read that. I'm not sure he
45.
said that.
The
45.
pots, shovels, and basins. All these utensils which Hiram made on behalf of King Shlomo for the house of God were made of refined copper. The king had them cast in earthen molds in the plain of the Jordan between Sukkos and Sarsand.
To bring them from the plain of the Jordan, he had to make them, he shaped them in the earth, and then how it's put and then carried it all the way to Jerusalem. It took thousands of workers to build this temple, and many years. Okay, number 47, yeah.
Shlomo left all the copper utensils unweighed because there were so very many, so the weight of the copper was not investigated.
It was too much to even count. That was going on. It was a huge, beautiful temple. The temple in the desert was a little shulach. It was a portable thing. It was a tent. But the heart of the Jews was there involved. This temple was beautiful, big. Go ahead.
Shlomo made all the vessels which were for the house of God, the golden altar and the golden table
That he made by himself. Go ahead.
on which the showbread was placed, and the supplementary menorahs of precious gold, in addition to the menorah made by Moshe, 5 on its right and 5 on its left.
It's not written here, but also he made 10 tables. There was the main table, and there were other tables. There was the main menorah and another 5 menorahs. Not necessarily for lighting candles. That's different opinion if they used to light the candles in the other menorahs or not. It was just for decoration. Because the idea of a menorah represents the Jewish people. And as we spoke about, it's all about making the vessel.
Their flowers, lamps, and tongs were made of gold.
The hand drums, the various musical instruments, the basins, spoons, and fire pans were of precious gold, and the keys to the doors of the inner house, which is the Holy of Holies, and to the doors of the house, which is the sanctuary, were made of gold.
Okay. We have gold. That's it. That's all of Torah. I told you the Haftorah is short. It's all about making vessels. If you wouldn't have this whole introduction, we wouldn't even understand what is happening here.
Where were those other 13 pomegranates?
Go ahead.
Hanukkah question.
Yeah.
It seems that there was just enough oil for one day, and there wasn't even a menorah. So one thing could be just to wait 8 days, and just someone go get a menorah, and somebody go get some oil, and we'll all meet together in 8 days. But there was an urgency, almost forcing the miracle. So, but I'm not sure what to make of that.
Very good. It was an urgency. More than that, the question is even bigger. You are allowed to light a menorah in the temple with non-pure oil. If you don't have pure oil, you still should fulfill the mitzvah. What is pure oil? That somebody who is not pure didn't touch it. If you don't have pure oil, you light another oil until you make pure oil. That really the miracle was kind of an extra thing. He didn't need a miracle. God did not make a miracle here because he didn't have what to eat. It was a miracle within making the mitzvah in a better way. You understand what I'm saying? The Jews were so eager to fulfill the mitzvah that God helped them. You're right, if they would be like you say, what's the rush? We waited so long, we'll wait another 8 days. But Judaism has just the opposite attitude. You're not waiting a minute to do a mitzvah. That's number one. Everything else is what's the rush. You better do the mitzvah now. Who knows what's going to be tomorrow? We have to catch up to every mitzvah we can do. And therefore God, when God saw the love of the Jews to fulfilling the mitzvah, He cooperated and made a miracle that the pure oil should work for 8 days. In essence, let's say if they would burn out, and the next night they would not have pure oil, they would use non-pure oil. Because the obligation is still an obligation, you have to light the menorah. It's better, it's preferred with pure oil. You understand what I'm saying? Then God made a mitzvah for something extra. For helping you to do the mitzvah because you saw Igya, because you made a vessel, because you made your extra mile, you did everything you could to do the mitzvah, then God comes in and is doing the mitzvah. I just read a story about a Jew in Russia sitting in a shtetl. I know the people, and it was the first day of Sukkot, and in this shtetl they did not have a sukkah, an idol. And it was one big chassid, he was sitting there Yom Tov morning, and he was crying. He was so upset that he doesn't have a lulav. And I told him, he was just crying. The lulav there, they didn't have a lulav. Suddenly walks in a Jew. He's not Chabad, and not so. Walks in with a lulav. The guy jumped on him and started to kiss him. To so bad that they fell both of them on the floor and they were rolling from joy. That's when you don't have a mitzvah. See, because they were deprived of the temple, and they finally had the opportunity to get into the temple. You know, the Jews in Russia were risking their life to do mitzvahs. Then they came to America, you didn't see them so hard. When somebody doesn't allow you, the desire to do the mitzvah is unbelievable. And sometimes that's the explanation why God creates such government regimes that don't allow Jews to mitzvah. Because the pleasure that God gets from one mitzvah that Jews do with this sacrifice is more than 100 mitzvahs that people just come to shul and do. And I'll finish with one important point. You know, what lays in such a mitzvah? The love, right? The fire. You also the fiddle on the roof, right? Fiddle on the roof. If you're not Jewish, you didn't see fiddle on the roof. Fiddler on the roof, in one of the questions, Tevi is asking his wife, do you love me, right? Do you love me? That she tells him what?
Being together for 15 years.
No, I love you, I cook for you and clean for you and take care of you for how many years, she says there? 50 years, ich weiß nicht was. Do I love you? He still asks her, do you love me? I'll tell you. What does this mean? A woman can clean and cook for her husband because she was raised that that's what she's supposed to do, not necessarily love her husband. She's doing it because it's a system. She's into an agreement, she's into a marriage, does she love him? Not necessarily. God is the husband. He's asking us, the Jewish people, the wife, do you love me? We tell him, for 50 years I'm putting on film and saying the blessing over the lulav and eating matzah and Pesach and do I love you? God is still asking, do you love me? That's not enough to do the mitzvahs. Chassidus brought to the world this concept. It's not enough to be a machine for mitzvahs. It has to have the spirit. The Hasidic movement came when the Alter Rebbe came 218 years ago. Everybody was religious. What was the contribution of Hasidus? It shouldn't be a mechanical thing. It should be life. It should be invested. When you are invested in the mitzvah, you will make sure you light the menorah no matter what, even with spears. Because that's what it's all about. The spirit of the mitzvah. That's what is important.